What is going on, everybody, and welcome to another technical video, which I kind of go over my stock picks for the week. If that sounds like something you're interested in, consider subscribing, as I do also provide a weekly update that I go over weekly events, upcoming earnings to get you prepared for the week ahead. Again, you can also check me out at Hemi137, as I do provide a daily pulse on the market to give you insight into what I am seeing in the market on that day. So go ahead and check that out as well. But aside from that, let's go ahead and dive straight into technicals today. So, as you can see, since essentially April, we've been pretty much on the uptick as we are trying to contemplate when essentially the rate cuts are going to happen. Again, there's been some big events over the weekend, so it's going to be very interesting with how the market opens. Again, there was an attempted assassination over the weekend for the previous president-elect and again presidential candidate Trump. So we'll see how the market opens. If it starts to gap down again, when it comes to any kind of threat, if it is on U.S. soil, it can frighten the market. So just keep that in mind. So it'd be interesting to see, even though it happened last night, how things may play out. The administration is also talking about what is supposed to give another, Oval Office essentially brief here this evening. We'll see what happens. They're trying to ease the market, so we'll see what happens when it opens up. But again, we won't ultimately know until Monday morning. So if there is panic, just keep that in mind. Again, any kind of threat on U.S. soil does draw panic in the market, so you do need to keep that in mind. And as of right now, I could see us, if we start selling off heavy, looking for support roughly here on the 5,500 mark. If it does hold that, you do have double support here, not far in between. Another one at essentially that 5,400 mark. Again, the psychological number. These are the daily supports on the 50, and then you have some pretty major support down here at the 52, 56. Not saying we're going to gap down, just crash. But could be a big concern, especially because of the current event that happened over the weekend. So we'll have to see how we open. We were in price discovery mode, but as you can see, price action is not looking too healthy when you're getting wicks like this, as we sold off heavily even after earnings on Friday, with the banks forecasting a lot of potential bad things, looking very weak. That is not something you want to see from some of your big banks. Again, this week is going to be heavily into earnings. So there can be a lot of volatility in individual stocks. So you do got to keep that in mind. Again, you are front loaded with a lot of industry leaders in the beginning, so it can impact the market. And with all the news that you get flooded with over the next couple of weeks, that does impact the market. And this is why I like to use zones to look for price targets. So again, if we start selling heavy and we do break the 55.70 because of the event that occurred over the weekend, you could potentially see the 5,500. We could sell off pretty quickly down there. Again, it really just depends on how we open. It may be nothing, and maybe the market doesn't care. But ultimately, understand, again, any kind of threat on the U.S. soil does draw fear into the market. So again, we have to wait and see how that plays out. But again, if it needs to break this, essentially this 56.40 mark is kind of been a cap as of right now. So every time we made an all-time high, we've kind of been shoved back down. We've also seen that kind of price action around here when we were at that 5,500 mark. So again, we'll continue to watch and see how that plays out. But again, there's going to be a lot of different news, a lot more volume coming back now that we're starting to get earnings. So just keep that in mind. We'll see how by the end of the week how we finish is going to be important. Ultimately, I do believe we will see some sort of retracement back, even if it's isn't based off the event over the weekend. I see some sort of retracement back to the 55. If it gaps down a lot, it could be very worrisome. So just keep that in mind. Understand they could start drawing new fear. Whenever you get new fear, the market sells off pretty heavy, so you got to be mindful of that. You always got to keep that in the back of your mind. Again, if it's on U.S. soil, it can draw a lot of fear. So that's XPX. Bitcoin did jump because of the event over the weekend, which is crazy to see. But I've talked about this range essentially from the 73K down to this 63K. We've broken that into the next range here, which sits around 63K to roughly around the 52K mark. This isn't a very big support here, but you got greater support at the 45K mark. So that would be the one I would be more concerned about as opposed to this. This is more of a speed bump. Obviously, you first hit it, it's going to wick up pretty fast. So we're going to have to watch and see how this does hold. But ultimately, your greater support is around that 45K mark. So we'll see how that does work. I think, like I've talked about before, I thought we were going to get a breakdown of this to down the 45K mark. Hopefully, we price in rate cuts again. Really heavily dependent. I talked about this in my weekly update. You have a lot of seeds being planted because they might be expecting something major to happen here very, very shortly, especially over the event over the weekend. I don't know what's going to come of that. It may be a nothing burger. It is a big historical event. You have to understand that. So you have to understand the ramifications of what could occur of that. Now, he isn't our direct president as of right now. That could change in the future. There's a lot of different implementations. Whatever your opinion is, ultimately understand that it will have an impact on, or could have a huge impact on the market. So we'll have to see what happens there. But nonetheless, we're continuing to watch this in this range here as of right now for Bitcoin. Once the futures open up, that may change a lot of things, but we'll continue to watch and see how that is. Again, a lot of consumers just don't have excess cash, so you don't have a lot of people buying. Institutions are sitting on the sideline because they're expecting things to get bad. We've talked about this multiple times, bank branch closures and all these other different things that are currently occurring. So you need to be mindful of that, and that's why you're starting to see a lot of stagnation because we're waiting for that next foot to drop, and the market has been waiting for over a year for that foot to drop. But again, if you follow my other video, you know that the debt ceiling has essentially helped them keep this thing propped up for the meantime. And as of right now, it's just grinding up. And it's been a heck of a grind at this point to even stay where we're at. The market wants to dump, and it's not allowing it to do that. So now let's go ahead and take a look at Tesla. Tesla, the momentum for this was amazing with the FSD stuff. And then we heard about the delay. Now the big thing is with Tesla, my key point here is Tesla needs to hold that 220. If for some reason it cannot hold that 220, it's going to be a very big problem. But I do believe that's where we may see. It may even come down to the 200. There's strong support here around the 200 as well. But I've talked about this multiple times. We finally got a breakout, and then we hear about this delay. Again, that really kind of killed momentum. We'll see what happens here as well. Also, there's been some events correlated with the current week event about Elon potentially have his life being threatened as well a couple different times. That could potentially draw concern. So you have to keep that in mind. But again, your key level here to really be watching is the 220. So you want to retest this breakout. You don't want this monthly candle to wick all the way back in here. That could very well happen too, especially if we got a lot of bad negative events occurring. July is not over. We're just halfway through. So that could rip this thing back into here and continue to chop. It can very much be a possibility too. So, but we do want to keep this in mind. I do believe this one's really going to rip once it does. I thought that was essentially the breakout, but we'll see what happens. Are starting to get bad sentiment. The delay doesn't help. We'll see what happens moving forward. If it's a nothing burger for earnings, which Tesla, I believe, are earnings next week. That is on the 23rd. Yeah, so next week, Tesla will have earnings again. We're really watching to see what happens there. If it's a nothing burger, this could start selling off, and this is just our pump before the earnings, which typically happens anyway. So you do want to keep that in mind moving forward. So we'll see again, this kind of current level right here. We want to get above this 245. But again, with the current event over the weekend, this thing may gap back down into here just because of what's going on. So that's definitely going to play a key factor in what's going on here. PayPal is currently right now, it's holding this level very well, this $58 level. Looking for price target is 68. I think if we can, once the market starts really turning, I think we're going to really start, one's really going to start ripping up. The consolidation on this is really well. I think it's one of the most undervalued stocks out there along with Tesla. So I do believe that, but we'll continue to watch. Maybe it does really great on earnings again. This thing explodes. I think it will start exploding maybe even before Tesla does. But again, we have to see how that does play out moving forward and going from there. So with that being said, let's see, we got Sofi. Sofi looks like it may be breaking out here. If as long as it can hold this 687 mark, that will be ideal. If it can hold above that, we may see a retracement back to the 930. Could be a strong possibility. Again, financials, you do want to be very careful though, because if we do start selling off because of what's going on with the current economic environment, financials will get hit hard. And that's the only thing. My precaution with SoFi is that they will get absolutely obliterated along with all the banks if that does occur. But again, in that same system, if banks start selling off, all these other stocks aren't going to be able to hold up the market. Banks matter big time when it comes to this. So you need the banks to at least be moving up. So we'll have to see how that does play. BA, again, continuing to consolidate. It's playing this range from roughly around 173 to 193. So we'll continue to watch and see how this does play out. Again, consolidating a lot. There's a lot of news based around this. We'll see what happens during the earning, if anything comes of what the events have been, with all the negativity based around BA. So we'll watch that one closely. Not a big fan, but it gives you good insight into value. Again, if value starts selling off more and financial starts selling off more, that could be very concerning. Celsius is one. I like the consolidation that's going on around here, roughly around this $55 mark. If it continues to remain around here, I may take a position in this as well. You could probably easily price target 100 once momentum. We got all that negative news. You got some pretty heavy selling here, but it is consolidating nicely around here. And if we get a lot of negative news and the market just starts selling off again, the event over the weekend could have a huge impact on this. And if it starts selling off again, you really want it to hold this roughly that $50 mark. If it breaks below that, that could be concerning. So just keep that in mind. But as of right now, it is consolidating nicely around here for potential turnaround. And again, price target looking roughly around that, probably more like the $90 mark. But we'll see what happens with that. I do potentially like that play there. Then ultimately you have JPM. Of course, it's had its earnings again starting to look weak, even for JPM. A lot of these, you can only push up so much. You can only have so much growth, especially when you print 40% of the money supply. Inherit a lot of the benefits of a bank that just went under. So you're going to obviously have some uptick, but ultimately it's not going to continue to be that way. So like I've talked about, you had this ascending wedge. So this could potentially be a bad play here coming up shortly. It's not saying it's going to happen on this earnings cycle, but maybe on the next one. Again, just all depends on the current events that are currently going on. But we're playing a very upward wedge here that looks like it's about ready to break down. Again, typically it will retrace 75%. So you may be looking at roughly around 160. This thing could retrace back to, again, depending on the momentum, depending on the current economic environment. During that time, if it does pull down here, it could make it even lower low. So those are the kinds of things you want to watch when they do start selling off heavily. Now, I think that is pretty much all the ones I had. I think there was another one I was looking at here that could be a potential play. I think that's pretty much it. I liked Celsius. I do always like Palantir. I like PayPal. Those are some good ones that are still, Snow has kind of been an interesting one. It's kind of losing momentum, but I do like that it's still in the buy zone here. Again, as long as it can hold the 117 mark, I think it's still a good buy. At least looking for that price target of 200. We'll see if that does retrace. I believe it will at some point here. Again, I think a lot of markets waiting for a bigger event to occur to determine what it's going to look like for a price in of anything. One thing to keep in mind is a lot of the Mag 7 have been selling off pretty heavy on Friday over the last couple of days. So just keep that in mind. If it starts losing momentum, starts selling again, this crazy straight up isn't going to last forever. Again, you can only get a couple of days out of this. The fact that it's gone straight up for so long is looking for some sort of retracement, at least back to the 206. I think it could go even lower to this 200 mark as a solid base. Breaks that, and you're kind of really looking at this zone of the 160 for Apple. So we'll see how that does. NVIDIA, again, started to show some weakness here. Could be a potentially lower high here. So to keep that in mind, if we start breaking below this 118 mark, that could be concerning, making a newer low from this low here. And then we may start seeing some heavy selling. Again, the market's really correlated tightly with NVIDIA. So if NVIDIA starts selling off heavy, that could be highly concerning. Again, if they miss for some reason, you have to understand that that's going to take down the whole market. So that could be, again, highly concerning there. Now, as far as like any other particular things I'm looking at, I'm not really looking at anything else as of right now. I'm kind of waiting for things to cool off. There's a couple of good buys right now. Again, you don't have to force everything. You just kind of wait for things to play out. Again, if you are, maneuvering these markets well and taking advantage of some of these dips, you can make some good profits on that end for a nice swing, and then ultimately understand that then you just kind of sit out. Again, if you're in a money market account, you can still make like 5% on your money market account while you sit and wait. And then when that next position opens up, then you load in there, and then you ride it to the next price target, and you just continue to do the same thing. Keep it simple is important. Overly complicating things, trying to take trades every single day isn't ideal. You definitely want to be focused in honing in on simplicity. Your system should be very simplistic and not overly complex. So as long as you can do that, then it keeps it much easier, much cleaner, and you're much more profitable. So with all that being said, thank you for making this far. Again, this video is pretty short. I'm really waiting to see what happens this evening when the futures open, and then we'll go from there and see what this week plays out. It's going to be a big week. Expect a big couple of weeks, and we'll see what kind of movement we get. So have a great day, and I'll see you later.